It was 11:52 p.m. when Florence Stewart's entire world tilted on its axis. One text, one mortifyingly explicit message sent to the wrong number in a moment of wine-fueled confidence. The response that came back made her blood turn to ice. "We need to talk. I'll be at your door in the morning." Only it wasn't the wrong number. It was sent directly to Terenzio Baresi, the cold, calculating Italian mafia boss she'd met exactly once, under the worst possible circumstances. She didn't know that one accidental text would drag her into a world of violence, luxury, and deadly politics she never asked to see. Before we dive deeper, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Your support keeps these stories alive, and trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. It was 11:52 p.m. on a Saturday night when Florence Stewart made the most catastrophic mistake of her 28 years on Earth. She was sprawled across her bed, 2 glasses of Moscato deep and giggling at her phone, texting her best friend Amara. She was dying to tell her about the ridiculously fine man she'd spotted at the Italian bakery that afternoon. Girl, if you had seen this man, I'm talking 6'3", dark hair, tattoos peeking out from his collar, tailored suit that probably cost more than my rent. Looked like he could absolutely ruin me, and I'd say thank you. Florence giggled as she kept typing, her inhibitions dissolved in sweet wine and the safety of her bedroom. I literally had to grip the counter to stop myself from asking him to take me home right then. Lord have mercy, he was fine. The things I would let that man do to me. She hit send, still grinning, and reached for her wine glass. Her phone buzzed immediately. She expected Amara's signature crying, laughing emojis and a string of "girl stop" messages. Instead, she got, "Explain this, now." Florence froze, wine glass suspended halfway to her lips. That wasn't Amara. Her heart began hammering against her ribs as she looked at who she'd actually texted. T. Baresi. Emergency only. Oh no! Oh God, no! No, 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 no! Florence's hands started trembling violently as the memory came flooding back with brutal clarity. 4 months ago, late evening, she'd been walking home from the subway when she'd witnessed something she shouldn't have, a shooting outside a restaurant in Little Italy. Chaos. Blood. Sirens. She'd stayed because the police needed witnesses, even though every instinct screamed at her to run. The victim had been standing near a black Maserati when it happened. He'd survived. Barely. Tall, devastatingly handsome, with ink crawling up his neck and murder in his dark eyes, even as paramedics worked on him. Italian accent, thick with pain and rage as he barked orders at men in expensive suits who appeared from nowhere. Before the ambulance took him, one of his men had approached her, polite, terrifying. He'd thanked her for staying, for giving a statement that would help clarify the situation. He'd handed her a business card with a single phone number. If the police need to follow up, or if you remember anything else, contact this number. Only this number. Mr. Baresi appreciates your discretion. She'd saved it as T. Baresi. Emergency only. And tried her absolute hardest to forget that night ever happened. Until now. Until she'd apparently just sent the most explicit, embarrassing text message of her entire life to a man who'd been shot in front of her, a man whose associates had looked like they could make bodies disappear without breaking a sweat. Florence's phone buzzed again. I need to know if this message was intended for me or sent in error. Answer immediately. His texts read like commands. Cold. Direct. No room for misunderstanding. Florence's fingers shook so badly she could barely type. Oh my God, I am so sorry. Wrong number. That was meant for my friend. Please delete that right now. She sent 4 more messages in rapid panic. I'm absolutely mortified. Please forget you ever saw that. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please. The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally. We need to talk, in person, tomorrow morning. I'll come to you. Her stomach dropped through the floor. What? No, that's really not necessary. Just forget it happened, please. This isn't optional, Miss Stewart. I'll be at your address at 8:00 a.m. Be ready to talk. Florence stared at her phone in absolute horror. How did he know her last name? She'd only given her first name to the police that night. How did he know where she lived? And why the hell did he need to see her in person over an accidental text? She tried calling the number. It went straight to a cold, automated voicemail in Italian, then English. This number does not accept incoming calls. She tried texting again. I don't understand why we need to meet. It was just a mistake. Please. No response. Florence didn't sleep at all that night. She paced. She panicked. She considered packing a bag and staying at Amara's, but something told her that running would only make things worse. At 7:30 a.m., Florence stood in front of her closet having a full-scale breakdown. What do you wear to meet a mafia boss you accidentally sexted? Business casual? Apologetic chic? Please don't kill me professional? She settled on dark jeans, a cream blouse, and low heels. Respectful, but not like she was trying too hard. Her braids were pulled back neatly, minimal makeup. She wanted to look put together, not seductive. At exactly 8:00 a.m., there was a firm knock at her apartment door. Florence's heart nearly exploded out of her chest. She looked through the peephole and her breath caught. It was him, Terenzio Baresi, in the flesh, standing in the hallway of her modest apartment building like he owned the place. He was even more devastating than she remembered. Taller, had to be 6'4". Sharp, angular features that looked carved from marble. Dark hair swept back, revealing more of those intricate tattoos that curled up his neck and disappeared beneath his collar. He wore all black, expensive black slacks, a fitted black button-down, Italian leather shoes that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe, and his eyes, cold, calculating, the kind of eyes that missed nothing. Two men in dark suits flanked him in the hallway, silent, watchful. Florence's hand shook as she unlocked the door and opened it. Miss Stewart, Terenzio said, his voice deep and accented, the kind of voice that made commands sound like seduction. May I come in? Do I have a choice? Florence whispered, trying to keep her voice steady. The faintest hint of a smile ghosted across his lips. No, but I appreciate you not making this complicated. He stepped inside, his men remaining in the hallway. The door clicked shut behind him, and suddenly her small apartment felt impossibly smaller with him in it. He looked around with those sharp eyes, taking in her bookshelves, her art prints, the remnants of her panicked morning routine. Please, sit, he said, gesturing to her own couch like he owned it. Florence sat, gripping her hands together to stop them from shaking. He took the chair across from her, leaning back with the easy confidence of a man who'd never been afraid of anything in his life. Let me properly introduce myself, he began, his accent wrapping around every word. My name is Terenzio Baresi. I run certain business operations in New York and New Jersey, primarily in the Italian communities, but expanding into other territories. Florence blinked. What kind of business? Import and export, real estate, security consulting. He paused deliberately. Among other things. The way he said other things made her skin prickle with warning. I don't understand why you're here, Florence said, fighting to keep her voice from shaking. I sent you an embarrassing text by accident. I apologized 100 times. Can't we just move on? I wish it were that simple. Terenzio pulled out his phone and showed her a screenshot. Her message, in all its explicit glory. This message was sent to my business line. The number I gave you 4 months ago isn't my personal phone. It's a monitored line that 5 of my men have access to. Florence wanted the earth to open up and swallow her whole. Oh my God. Yes, which means 5 other people saw your message before I could remove it. I'm so sorry, Florence whispered, her voice cracking. I didn't know. I thought it was just your number. I know. Which is why we're having this conversation instead of a very different one. His expression remained serious, dangerous even. But there's a problem. Those 5 men now believe I have a woman in my life, someone close enough to send me that kind of message. And in my world, Miss Stewart, perceptions are everything." "Your world," Florence repeated slowly. "I'm not just a businessman." Terenzio leaned forward slightly, his eyes locked on hers. "I'm the head of the Baresi family organization. We handle operations that require absolute discretion and loyalty. We have enemies, rivals, people who would exploit any perceived weakness." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "You're telling me you're Mafia?" "Such a crude American term," he said with the ghost of a smirk. "But essentially, yes." He said it so casually, like he was discussing the weather, like admitting to organized crime was just another Tuesday morning. "And because of your text," he continued, "my men now believe you're someone important to me, someone intimate, someone who could be leverage." "Just tell them it was a wrong number," Florence said desperately. "I did. They don't believe me." Terenzio's jaw tightened, almost imperceptibly. "They think I'm protecting your identity by claiming it was a mistake. In our world, that's what a man does when he wants to keep a woman safe. He denies her existence." He leaned forward, and Florence could smell his cologne. Expensive, dark, intoxicating. "Here's our situation, Miss Stewart. Rumors are already spreading through my organization that I have a woman, a black woman, specifically, which is unusual in my circles and makes you particularly memorable. Within 48 hours, my enemies will know about you too." Florence felt like she might pass out. "What are you saying?" Terenzio's eyes bore into hers with an intensity that made her feel stripped bare. "I'm saying that whether you like it or not, you're now part of my world. And the only way to keep you alive is to make everyone believe the rumor is true." Florence's mouth went dry. "You want me to pretend to be your girlfriend?" "Not want, need." Terenzio's correction was sharp. "My enemies are already circling. The Rossetti family in Brooklyn, the Calabrese crew in Jersey, they're all waiting for a weakness to exploit. You've become that weakness." "This is insane." Florence stood up, pacing her small living room. "I'm not part of this. I didn't ask for any of this." "No, but you witnessed a hit 4 months ago and stayed to give a statement. That made you useful. And now this text has made you dangerous." He watched her pace with unsettling calm. "To both of us." Florence stopped, turning to face him. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" Terenzio stood, and the sheer presence of him filled the space. "For the next 2 months, you'll be seen as my woman. You'll attend family functions, dinners, events. You'll stay in my home when necessary for your protection." "Stay in your home?" Florence's voice pitched higher. "I have a job, a life." "Which you can keep with modifications. My men will drive you to work, screen your calls, monitor your apartment." His eyes darkened. "The alternative is that I can't guarantee your safety. My rivals will test whether you matter to me. They'll hurt you to see if I react. And when I don't protect you because we're not actually together—" He let the implication hang in the air. Florence felt sick. "So my choices are to play pretend or become a target." Yes, the bluntness of it stole her breath. No apologies, no false comfort. Just cold reality, delivered in that devastating accent. "And if I refuse?" she whispered. Terenzio moved closer, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "Then I'll post guards outside your building and hope it's enough. But hope isn't strategy, Florence. And in my world, hope gets people killed." It was the first time he'd used her first name. Something about the way it sounded in his voice, intimate, possessive, sent a shiver down her spine. 2 months, she said finally, her voice barely steady. "And then what?" "Then I make it clear publicly that things didn't work out. The interest will fade. You'll be old news." He pulled a phone from his pocket, not the one she'd texted, a different one, and held it out. "This is your new number, only I have it. Your old phone stays off." Florence took the phone with shaking hands. "My driver will pick you up at 6 tonight. Bring clothes for a week. We have a family dinner tomorrow, and you need to be prepared." He moved toward the door, his men straightening in the hallway as he approached. Terenzio. The name felt foreign on her tongue. He turned, one hand on the doorframe. What if I can't do this? What if I'm not convincing? Something flickered in those cold eyes. Not quite warmth, but acknowledgement. Then we both better learn quickly, Bellissima, because our lives depend on it. The door closed behind him, and Florence collapsed onto her couch, staring at the strange phone in her hands, wondering how a single drunken text had just cost her everything she'd built to stay safe. Terenzio's penthouse was obscene. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan, marble floors, art that probably cost more than her college education. Florence stood in the entrance with her hastily packed bag, feeling completely out of place. Your room is down the hall, second door on the left. Terenzio loosened his tie, and Florence tried not to notice how the movement drew attention to his tattooed throat. Dinner is tomorrow at 8, my family estate in Westchester. Your family, Florence repeated weakly. My uncle, my cousins, their wives, the people who need to believe this is real. He poured himself whiskey from a crystal decanter. Wear something elegant, but not flashy. They'll be watching everything. Florence wanted to scream. Instead, she nodded and escaped to her room, which was bigger than her entire apartment. The Baresi estate was a sprawling mansion that looked like it belonged in a movie. Florence's hands trembled as Terenzio helped her out of the car, his grip firm and possessive on her lower back. Stay close to me, he murmured. Don't answer questions about how we met. I'll handle it. The moment they walked through the door, Florence felt the weight of every eye in the room. 20 people, maybe more, all turned to stare at her, the only black face in a sea of Italian traditionalists. An older woman in Chanel approached, her smile tight. Terenzio, darling, you didn't mention you were bringing someone. Zia Carmela, this is Florence. His hand pressed more firmly against Florence's back. My girlfriend. The temperature in the room dropped. Whispers rippled through the crowd like poison. How exotic, Carmela said, the word dripping with false sweetness. Tell me, dear, where did you two meet? Before Florence could fumble an answer, Terenzio pulled her closer. That's our business, Zia, not yours. Dinner was a minefield. Every question felt like a trap. Every smile hid knives. Florence felt herself being dissected by these people who saw her as everything wrong in their pristine Italian world. Then a man at the end of the table, sharp suit, dead eyes, leaned forward. I heard the Calabresi family is very interested in Terenzio's new companion. Apparently they're curious how serious this relationship really is. The room went silent. Terenzio's hand found Florence's thigh under the table, squeezing once, a warning to stay quiet. When he spoke, his voice was lethal and calm. You can tell the Calabresi family that anyone who touches what's mine will lose more than their curiosity. They'll lose their hands, then their territory, then their lives. Florence's heart hammered against her ribs. The casual violence in his words, the absolute certainty, this was the man people feared. The man smiled coldly. Of course, I'll pass along the message. As they left 2 hours later, Florence was shaking. Did he just threaten me in front of your entire family? He was testing me, seeing if I'd protect you. Terenzio opened the car door, his eyes scanning the dark driveway. Now everyone knows I will. That's both good and very, very bad for you. Why bad? He looked at her, and something dark flickered in his expression, something almost like regret. Because now you're not just leveraged, Florence. You're a prize, and every family that wants to hurt me will try to take you first. The drive back to Manhattan was silent, but Florence felt Terenzio's presence like a physical thing beside her, dangerous, protective, and utterly terrifying. She'd entered the wolves' den, and there was no way out. You flinch every time I touch you. Florence looked up from her coffee the next morning to find Terenzio watching her with those unsettling dark eyes. He'd appeared in the kitchen doorway wearing nothing but black dress pants, his tattooed chest and arms on full display. She forced herself to look away. Because you're intimidating. I'm supposed to be your boyfriend. If you jump every time I put my hand on you, no one will believe this. He moved closer, bare feet silent on the marble. "We need to practice." "Practice what exactly?" "Being comfortable with each other." He stopped directly in front of her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating off his skin. "Touch me." Florence's mouth went dry. "What?" "Put your hand on my chest, my arm, somewhere." His voice dropped lower. "If we're going to convince people we're lovers, you need to touch me like you've done it 1,000 times before." Her hand trembled as she reached out, pressing her palm against his chest. His skin was warm, the muscle beneath firm and utterly solid. She felt his heartbeat, steady, controlled, unlike her own racing pulse. "Better," Terenzio murmured. His hand came up to cover hers, holding it against him. "But you're still afraid." "I'm not afraid of you." "Yes, you are." His other hand lifted to her face, fingers trailing along her jaw with devastating gentleness. "But you're also attracted to me. I can see it in the way you look at me when you think I'm not watching." Florence's breath caught. "That's not... Shh, don't lie." He tilted her chin up, forcing her to meet his eyes. "I'm attracted to you too. Have been since that night 4 months ago when you stayed to help a stranger bleeding in the street. Most people run. You didn't." The air between them felt electric, charged with something dangerous and undeniable. "This is pretend," Florence whispered, even as her body betrayed her by leaning into his touch. "Is it?" Terenzio's thumb brushed across her lower lip, and Florence's knees nearly buckled. "Because right now, Bellissima, the way I want to kiss you feels very real." He didn't kiss her. Instead, he stepped back, creating distance that felt like a physical loss. "Tonight we have a charity gala. You'll wear the dress in your closet. We'll dance. I'll hold you close, and you won't flinch. You'll look at me like I'm the only man in the room." His eyes darkened with something that looked almost like hunger. "And everyone will believe we're exactly what they think we are." That night, pressed against him on the dance floor with his hand splayed possessively across her lower back, Florence realized the terrible truth. She wasn't pretending anymore. Every touch, every heated glance, every whispered word in Italian that she didn't understand but felt in her bones. It was all becoming devastatingly real. "You're doing well," Terenzio murmured against her ear, his breath hot on her skin. "So, they all believe it. Do you?" The words escaped before she could stop them. He pulled back just enough to look at her, and what Florence saw in his eyes made her heart stop. Heat, want, something raw and unguarded that he quickly masked. "That's the problem, Florence." His voice was rough, almost angry. "I'm starting to." The song ended. The spell broke. But as Terenzio led her off the dance floor, his hand never left hers. Something between them had shifted tonight, something neither of them could take back. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon. Florence had insisted on going back to her apartment to grab more clothes, just a quick trip with Terenzio's driver waiting outside. She'd been inside for maybe 10 minutes when she heard the sound of breaking glass from her bedroom window. Her blood turned to ice. 2 men in dark clothing came through fast, their faces covered. Florence ran for the door, screaming, but a hand clamped over her mouth from behind. A third man. They'd come from both sides. "Shut up and come quietly. The boss just wants to talk," one growled, in accented English. Florence bit down hard on the hand covering her mouth. The man cursed, and she broke free, stumbling toward her kitchen. Her fingers closed around a knife just as the apartment door exploded inward. Terenzio came through like a force of nature. Florence had seen him dangerous before, cold, controlled, lethal in his calm. This was different. This was rage incarnate. He moved with brutal efficiency. The first man went down with a sickening crack, his arm bent at an unnatural angle. The second pulled a gun, but Terenzio was faster, disarming him and driving his fist into the man's face with savage force. The third man, the one who'd grabbed Florence, tried to run. Terenzio caught him by the throat, slamming him against the wall hard enough to crack the plaster. "Who sent you?" Terenzio's voice was barely human, thick with Italian and murder. "Who?" "See, Calabrese," the man choked out. "Rossetti hired us. Wanted to see if she was really yours. Terenzio's fist connected with his face, and the man crumpled. More of Terenzio's men poured into the apartment. Where they'd been, Florence didn't know, but Terenzio had clearly known this was coming. He'd used her as bait. You knew. Florence's voice shook with fury and fear. You knew they'd come for me. Terenzio turned to her, and the look on his face made her step back. Blood splattered his shirt. His knuckles were raw. His eyes were wild with something primal and possessive. I suspected. I had men stationed outside. He crossed to her in 3 strides, his hands framing her face with surprising gentleness, despite the violence still radiating from him. Did they hurt you? Tell me if they hurt you. No, Florence's anger dissolved into trembling. The adrenaline crash hit hard. You used me as bait. I used myself as bait by putting you here. His forehead pressed against hers, his breathing ragged. This is my fault. All of it. And it ends now. 20 minutes later, Florence was back in Terenzio's car, watching her apartment building disappear in the rearview mirror. You're not going back there, Terenzio said, his voice still rough with barely controlled fury. Not to work without a full security detail. Not anywhere without me knowing exactly where you are. For how long? Permanently. He turned to look at her, and Florence saw something raw in his expression. Fear, possession, something deeper. You live with me now. Full time. No more pretending this is temporary, Florence. You're mine to protect, and I'm done playing games with your safety. His hand found hers in the dark car, threading their fingers together. They came for you because of me. So now you stay with me. Wherever I go, you go. That's not negotiable. Florence should have argued, should have demanded her independence back. Instead, she squeezed his hand and whispered, Okay. Because the truth was, she'd never felt safer than in this moment, covered in fear and adrenaline, sitting beside the most dangerous man she'd ever met. The man who'd torn through her apartment like an avenging angel to save her. The man whose hand was shaking as it held hers. The retaliation came swift and merciless. Florence woke at 3 a.m. to find Terenzio's side of the bed empty. She'd been sleeping in his room since the attack, not discussing it, just gravitating there naturally, finding comfort in his presence. She found him in his office, surrounded by maps and photographs, his phone pressed to his ear as he spoke rapid Italian. When he saw her in the doorway, something flickered across his face. The Calabrese family hit 2 of our warehouses tonight, he said after ending the call. Rossetti is backing them. This isn't about territory anymore, Florence. It's about you. About me claiming something they think I shouldn't have. Then let me go. The words hurt to say. End this. No. The word was absolute, final. They drew blood. Now I'm finished. Over the next week, Florence saw a side of Terenzio she'd only glimpsed before. He was ruthless, strategic, brutal when necessary. She watched from his penthouse as he orchestrated moves like chess pieces, cutting off supply lines, turning allies, making examples of those who crossed him. Men came to the apartment bloodied and left with orders. Phone calls were made in languages she didn't understand, but the tone was universal: obey or suffer. One night, he came home with blood on his hands that wasn't his own. Florence met him at the door with a warm washcloth, cleaning his knuckles without a word. His eyes watched her face, waiting for the fear, the disgust, the rejection. I know what you are, she said quietly. I'm not naive, Terenzio. I know what you do. And you're still here. I'm still here. She pressed a kiss to his cleaned knuckles. Because I also know you're the reason I'm alive, the reason your men's families eat, the reason this neighborhood doesn't fall to people worse than you. His hand cupped her face with a tenderness that contrasted sharply with the violence he'd just committed. You see me, he whispered in Italian, then English. You see all of me, and you don't run. The war reached its peak when the Calabrese family made their final play, a coordinated attack on 3 Baresi properties simultaneously. Terenzio's response was devastating and precise. Florence watched him command his men like a general, his mind 10 steps ahead of everyone else. He wasn't just fighting to win, he was fighting to end this permanently. When the dust settled, the Calabrese family was crippled. Rossetti had withdrawn support, leaving them exposed and broken. Terenzio returned to find Florence waiting up for him, sitting on the couch with tea she couldn't drink, wearing one of his shirts. "It's over," he said, exhaustion finally showing in his voice. Florence stood, crossing to him. "What did it cost?" "2 men were injured, none dead." He pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. "I won, Florence. I won, and you're safe." She felt him tremble slightly, the adrenaline crash, the weight of command, the fear he'd never admitted. "I love you," he said into her hair, the words raw and unplanned. "Dio mi aiuti, I love you. This stopped being pretend for me weeks ago." Florence pulled back to look at him, this dangerous, brutal, tender man who'd turned her world upside down. "It stopped being pretend for me at the gala," she confessed. "Maybe even before." When he kissed her, it tasted like relief and confession and promises neither of them had planned to make. The war was over, but theirs was just beginning. "You can't go alone," Terenzio continued, buttoning his shirt, his movements precise despite Florence's protest. It was dawn, barely 12 hours since their confession, and he was already preparing to leave. "The old families want to sit down, neutral ground, to discuss terms and prevent more bloodshed." He turned to face her, cupping her jaw. "This is how we end wars, Bellissima. Someone has to speak for peace. And if it's a trap, then I'll fight my way out." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "But I have something to come home to now. That makes me more careful, not less." Florence's hands fisted in his shirt. "I just got you. I'm not ready to lose you." "You won't." He kissed her forehead, her nose, her lips, gentle promises. "I'll come back. I swear it on everything I am." She watched him leave with Marco and 3 other men, her heart in her throat. The hours crawled by like years. Florence paced the penthouse, unable to eat, unable to think about anything except Terenzio walking into a room full of men who might want him dead. Zia Carmela came by at noon, surprising given her cold reception at that first dinner. "He's negotiating with the commission," the older woman said, pouring them both espresso. "The heads of all 5 families. They respect strength, and Terenzio showed them plenty. But respect doesn't always mean mercy." "Why are you telling me this?" Carmela's eyes softened slightly. "Because I was wrong about you. You didn't run when things got dangerous. You stood beside him. That's what our world needs, women with spines." She sipped her espresso. "And because he loves you. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you." Florence's phone buzzed at 4 p.m. A single text from an unknown number. "He's alive. Coming home." She nearly collapsed with relief. Terenzio walked through the door at 6 p.m., exhausted but whole. Florence launched herself at him, and he caught her easily, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "Peace terms accepted," he murmured against her hair. "Territory boundaries redrawn. Reparations paid. The commission has guaranteed no further retaliation." He pulled back to look at her. "It's over, Florence. Really over." "What did it cost you?" 2 of the warehouses. A percentage of the Brooklyn operations. Pride. His smile was tired but genuine. "Small prices for keeping you safe. For keeping my family safe." Florence kissed him desperately, trying to communicate everything she felt: fear, relief, love, gratitude. When they finally broke apart, Terenzio kept her close, his forehead resting against hers. "I need to ask you something," he said quietly, "and I need you to be honest." "Anything." "This life, my life, it's never going to be normal. There will always be danger, politics, violence at the edges. I can keep you as safe as possible, but I can't promise you peace. Not the kind you had before. His eyes searched hers. Is that something you can live with? Because I'm not letting you go, Florence. I can't. But I need to know you're choosing this, choosing me, with your eyes open. Florence thought about her quiet life before that accidental text. Safety, the predictability, the loneliness she hadn't even recognized until Terenzio had forced his way into her world. I choose you, she said firmly. All of you. The danger, the family, the empire. I choose this life because you're in it. Ti amo, he whispered. I love you. I love you too. When he kissed her this time, it tasted like freedom, like choice, like a future they'd both fight to protect. The pretending was over. The real love story had finally begun. Florence stood in the penthouse kitchen, making coffee in one of Terenzio's shirts, when she realized she couldn't remember the last time she'd thought about her old apartment. She'd kept paying rent on it, some part of her clinging to the idea of an escape route. But standing here now, watching the sunrise paint Manhattan gold through floor-to-ceiling windows, she realized she didn't want an escape anymore. She wanted this, him, this life they were building together. You're thinking too loud, Terenzio's voice rumbled from behind her. His arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her back against his chest. What's going on in that beautiful head? I want to let my apartment go, she said. For real this time, not keep it as a backup plan. She felt him still behind her. You're sure? I'm sure. Florence turned in his arms. I don't need a way out, Terenzio. I'm exactly where I want to be. That evening, Terenzio came home with something in his hand, a small velvet box that made Florence's heart jump before she saw what was actually inside. A key, platinum, engraved with intricate Italian designs. This is the master key to this penthouse, he said, his voice unusually nervous, and to the estate in Westchester, and the villa in Sicily that belonged to my grandfather. He placed it in her palm, closing her fingers around it. I want you to have them, not as my girlfriend, as my partner, my equal in everything I own. Florence's eyes burned with tears. Terenzio, you gave up your safety for me, your privacy, your quiet life. The least I can do is give you keys to mine. He kissed her forehead. This is your home now, Florence. Truly, I want you to feel that. She threw her arms around his neck, and he held her close, breathing her in like she was oxygen. Thank you, she whispered, for seeing me, for choosing me. Always, Bellissima, always. Florence had just finished a meeting at work. Yes, she'd kept her job, with the compromise of having security discreetly nearby, when Terenzio texted asking her to meet him at their favorite Italian restaurant in Little Italy. She arrived to find the entire restaurant empty except for one table by the window, covered in candles and flowers. Terenzio stood beside it in a perfectly tailored suit, looking nervous in a way she'd never seen before. What's all this? Florence asked, her heart already racing. Sit with me. They sat, and he took both her hands across the table. 6 months ago, you sent me a text that changed my entire life, he began. You walked into my world by accident and turned it upside down. You saw the worst of me, the violence, the darkness, the monster, and you stayed anyway. Terenzio, let me finish. His thumbs stroked across her knuckles. You made me want to be better, not softer, not weaker, but better. You made me want a future I'd never let myself imagine before. He reached into his pocket. Florence Stewart, you are the bravest, most brilliant, most beautiful woman I've ever known. He opened the box, revealing a stunning ring, a diamond surrounded by sapphires, set in platinum with intricate Italian filigree. Marry me, he said simply. Not because you have to, not because it's safer or easier. Marry me because I love you more than I knew I could love anything. Marry me and let me spend the rest of my life proving I'm worthy of the gift you gave me when you chose to stay. Florence's tears spilled over, and she was nodding before she could even speak. Yes, she managed through the emotion. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. Terenzio stood, pulling her up with him, and kissed her like she was the only thing anchoring him to earth. When he slid the ring onto her finger, it fit perfectly, because of course he'd planned every detail. I love you, Florence said against his lips. My dangerous, protective, ridiculous Italian man. I love you so much. Ti amo per sempre, he murmured. I love you forever. As they swayed together in the empty restaurant, Florence thought about that night 6 months ago. The wine, the mistake, the text that had shattered her safe, quiet life. She wouldn't change a single thing, because that accidental text had led her here, to this man, this love, this impossible, dangerous, beautiful life. Florence Baresi stood beside her husband at another family dinner, his hand possessive and proud on her lower back. Zia Carmela was actually smiling at her now. The family had accepted her, not easily, but completely. Happy, Mrs. Baresi? Terenzio murmured against her ear. Florence turned to look at him. This man who'd gone from terrifying stranger to protector to lover to husband. Deliriously, she whispered back. And when he kissed her in front of everyone, she kissed him back without hesitation. The accidental text that should never have been sent had become the beginning of the greatest love story she'd ever known.